We just finished doing a video on superintendent of schools in Youngtown, Ohio. There was a large-scale episode of black mob violence at one of his high schools, and he looks in the camera and says, "Man, I've never heard of anything like this happening at a school before, and I've been a superintendent for 40 years." Anybody that's ever been on this channel knows that we document school black mob violence in schools more than anything else. Hundreds and hundreds of examples all over the country, and usually each one represents somebody saying, "Oh yeah, that's been happening here a long time." I was thinking of that when I came across the story today of a cancer survivor that was robbed in a suburb of Los Angeles, Fontana. You didn't know, by looking at her, you wouldn't know she had cancer, but you would know she was sick. She looks frail, clearly handicapped. So I'm without hesitation, I'm going to file this under Black Violence Against Handicapped Frail Old Lady section. And we have a whole playlist of those too.
Well, Lou and Glenn, yes, this is the Fontana Shopping Center where that female cancer survivor was victimized, attacked by these robbers who remain on the loose. And police fear, since they struck before, that they could strike again and become more violent. 53-year-old mother and grandmother Maribel Centeno is a 3-time cancer survivor who was left brain injured, hurt unnecessarily by robbers in Fontana, and she's going through more pain after being attacked, pistol whipped with a semi-automatic handgun and robbed around 5:30 Wednesday night on March 2nd in the parking lot of this shopping center in the 16,900 block of Foothill Boulevard. Now, the robbers are caught on surveillance video. Fontana police say after Maribel paid her phone bill in the shopping center, one robber grabbed her by the back of her neck and pointed a gun at her as he ripped off her thick gold chain necklace that had Maribel and a diamond on it. The victim struggled with the suspect and then ran away before being tackled to the pavement and pistol whipped. An assault that fractured Maribel's skull. The suspects are described as black males, both with thin builds and in their early 20s to 30s, who jumped into a black 1996 to 2002 Mercedes-Benz 4-door E-Class with tinted windows and possibly a sunroof, driven by an unknown female driver. Now, police say the suspects have hit in Fontana and nearby jurisdictions before, and the fear is that the armed and dangerous robbers will strike again and possibly become more violent. Maribel says she is a fighter and will survive this. Detectives and Maribel's daughter and family want anyone with information about these suspects to give Fontana police a call before anyone else is hurt or worse.
I'm just hoping that somebody, will come forward and help me find these guys. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. I'm determined to find this young man. I've always been a fighter, and I'm not ready to give up.
Now, this shopping center is where she had just left from paying her PCS phone bill when Maribel was sitting in her car and the robbers attacked. Again, they have attacked before. Many of the shop owners, they all know about this, but a couple of women who I approached and just asked at random, they had no idea. We've seen some police circling as well as extra security. Everyone is asked to keep their head on swivel, and anyone with information is asked to call Fontana PD. Live.
And don't make the black kids angry and White Girl Bleed a lot. We've done a couple of stories from this part of the world. The one I'm thinking of off the top of my head is a large group of black people, like 5 or 6, went into a jewelry store. They were going to do the heist thing. They saw a little old Asian woman there. I think she was Vietnamese. They said, "Well, she looks like she's an easy target." They pulled out a gun on her. They "Give us all your jewelry." She pulled out a gun on them and started shooting. I'm sorry to laugh, but I don't care about them. She killed 2 of them, and she chased the rest away. On the same day, on the same channel, there's another story out of Fontana. Somebody walked into a Fontana jewelry store, tried to rob it. We don't know who the owner is. We don't know who the victim is yet. That guy pulled a gun out and killed that robber as well. So there's one victim without a gun. One guy who refused to be a victim with a gun. I guess you get to choose which you want to be. Either way, don't make the black kids angry. Meet Brian Edwards, Dover, Delaware. Brian has a disease called protein syndrome. It's a condition where your body, different parts of your body, grow sometimes wildly out of proportion. Only like 100 people on the planet have it. You might recognize the most famous case of it from the Elephant Man. Here's a couple of photos of other people with the disease. In Brian's case, it means he can't move his neck, can't really move that well. Maybe if you saw him, you'd know something was wrong with him. No known cure. Brian's a happy, upbeat kind of guy, and he was out walking around in his neighborhood a couple days ago picking up trash in his little neighborhood called Rodney Village. Now, Rodney Village is a chocolate village with over 50% of the people living there are black. Another 25-30% are white, and the rest whatever. Anyway, a bunch of black people saw Rodney saw Brian. They started taunting him, threatening him. Of course, Brian explained to them he wasn't bothering them and he didn't want to fight them, which of course 9 times out of 10 is really an invitation for someone to come over and beat the hell out of you, which is what those kids did to this handicapped 31-year-old. They surrounded him, they knocked him unconscious, and while he was unconscious, they sat on him, held him down, and they beat him some more. Brian's wife said incidents like this have happened in the past in the neighborhood, but she never expected it to happen to her husband. Brian has had 40 surgeries in his lifetime. This happened at 12:30 in the middle of the day. And she says, I can't even make myself feel better by saying don't go out after dark, because there's no safer time than that. Brian describes the situation by saying he and a 16-year-old neighbor were approached by a group of teens who kept watching them while they moved down the street. The interaction turned hostile after one of the teens asked them what they were looking at. Brian said he had no interest in getting into a fight and ignored them. The boys surrounded them, hitting Brian in the head, knocking him out. They continued to punch him repeatedly. They had pinned him to the ground, sitting on his chest to hold him down. Life has not been the best for me throughout the years, but you have to take the positive with the negative, Brian said. The scariest part was when the kid was sitting on my chest, punching my face. People have other issues you don't even know about, he said of his attackers.
There are still generations of people, older people, who were born and bred and marinated in that prejudice and racism, and they just have to die.
Brian and his wife are going to have some kind of community cleanup at the end of this month, end of January, to demonstrate to their neighbors that they are not afraid of the teenagers who live in their neighborhood. I don't know exactly what he's going to accomplish with that. A couple of months ago in the summer, my buddy and I were going to a kid I grew up with. He's been on my podcast. His name is Willie Shields. Willie and I were in his car, kind of an old restored jalopy, 1952. I don't think you called it jalopy, but it's 1952 something or other. Anyway, sometimes in Wilmington to get from point A to point B, you have to go through the ghetto, unless you want to take a very long, complicated way around. But anyway, Willie, we were kids. Willie didn't grow up too far from there, and he was always known as one of the tough kids. So there we go, through the ghetto. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. Took about 10 minutes, a couple of street lights. And after we got past the ghetto, I asked Willie if he was afraid when we went through there. And he said he kind of was, but he really wasn't, and neither was I. But we were both, to be afraid is to have sweaty palms, and it's a physical thing, I think, and it causes panic and flight and all this stuff. And we weren't afraid, but we were extremely aware of where we were, extremely aware of what would happen if the car broke down, or if we stopped at a street light for too long without keeping our head kind of on a swivel. So there's an enormous difference between being afraid and being aware. Being afraid doesn't help. Being aware is really important. But at some point, the awareness, what good does it do you? If you're a young family living in a neighborhood with 50% black people, including lots of young black people with lots of hostility and resentment to white people that they don't mind taking it out on weaker white people through violence and knocking somebody out, what good is awareness going to do you? You have to be aware enough to know that white people are targets of violence in black neighborhoods. This is not the first episode of black mob violence in Dover. And it kind of happens frequently. There's a lot of it is centered around Delaware State University, a black college. A lot of it is centered around the parking lot of the Dover Downs Casino, which by coincidence happens to be next to Delaware State University. And so for Brian, I don't know what the medical prognosis is for people with Brian's condition. But I don't even think my normal bit of advice is gonna help him or his wife as they try to figure out how they're going to live the rest of their life. But I have to remind them, because apparently no one's ever told them this. They've never seen the movie. They've never seen these videos. They've never read the books. They've never run into anybody that said, "What the hell are you doing living in that neighborhood?" That piece of advice, of course, is don't make. If you were lucky, when you were a kid, you knew somebody like Sonny Stark. Sonny was a couple of years older than us, bigger than us. But there was something about Sonny, we never really figured out a name for it, but he was slow. Nobody ever called him mentally retarded. But the first time any of us ever saw the Tom Hanks movie, Forrest Gump, we looked at each other and went, "Hey, that's Sonny." Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Here we talk about black mob violence, black on white crime, and the greatest lie of our generation, the myth of black victimization. All without racism, without rancor, without apologies. So Sonny was welcome in our group and participated as much as he could. And he lived, I think Sonny probably lived till he was about 60. But even whenever any of us came back into the neighborhood and we would see Sonny picked it up, not today, he picked it up at the last instant he saw you, which was probably when we were 12, 13, or 14. Well, there's another Sonny that became the victim of black mob violence and black on white crime in St. Augustine near Jacksonville, Florida. And it's amazing how much black on handicapped, black on mentally disabled crime there is. So we're going to look at a news clip from St. Augustine, and then a few more examples, but just know there are hundreds of these cases. I documented a lot of them, and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. They're a special kind. These people are vulnerable in a special way. But if you're vulnerable, you're going to be a target.
We've uncovered the story behind yet another attack in the heart of downtown Cleveland, and the victim is now speaking out.
Only 15, Benita Rodriguez has been missing from Florida since July 4th. Overnight, her family learned she has been found in Philadelphia. Rodriguez's family says she played with the children of this woman, Linda Ann Weston, and may have been taken by her. Overnight, police showed reporters the open space, only 6 feet by 10 feet, where they say Weston and others held 4 mentally disabled adults as prisoners, along with 3 dogs.
Philadelphia police are trying to track down the person who attacked, robbed, and stabbed a 61-year-old woman this morning. The victim didn't stand much of a chance. She has MS and was in her wheelchair.
Went to play my lottery at ShopRite like I do every morning.
Amaryllis Morales says she was on her wheelchair about 10:20 this morning on her way back from the ShopRite at Island and Lindbergh. She says suddenly a young man jumps off his bike and runs towards her.
He says, "Give me all your money." I says, "I don't have no money. Give me all your money, everything you have. Or you're going to die."
The victim, who has suffered with MS for over 34 years, said she was struggling with the man for her handbag when the attacker suddenly pulled a knife and stabbed her in the right shoulder.
All there was, Dan, $80. But I had my license and my credit cards and that.
For $80, you
For $80. And it hurts, I'll tell you. I'm going through pain right now.
Police believe this assailant is the same one who stabbed and robbed a 63-year-old man Monday around 5 in the afternoon. The attack on Amaryllis Morales is the 3rd attack on the disabled person across the tri-state area since last week.
When I first started writing about black mob violence and black on white crime in White Girl Bleed a Lot, it was not really about the crime. It was mostly about how local and national media ignore, deny, excuse, condone, encourage, and even lie about it. I thought that was the really weird part. But since then, the White Girl Bleed a Lot and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry and all the videos we do on this channel and all the writings I do at American Thinker, Front Page, Breitbart, Daily Caller, places like that, it's really grown in a way I didn't anticipate. Not just the number of people reading the articles and watching the videos, which now is enormous, but it's kind of grown in a mission. And I hear this all the time from people in emails and in postings on my various sites. This work is saving people's lives. People are becoming aware of dangerous situations they might be in, their friends or their family or their neighbors might be in, that they had no idea about before. That's why it's important to read Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, to watch these videos, to share the videos and the books with your friends and neighbors who probably need it the most, but who know it the least. And so it is with regret I tell you that if you're a handicapped person on any level and you decide you're going to take your wheelchair out for a stroll to the local supermarket to get some lottery tickets, I have to remind you of this one thing that could save your life. Don't make the black kids angry. How many episodes of Black on handicapped violence have we documented here? A lot. Now let's add one more.
So far, Prince George's County Police have cleared the scene. The body was found here in the playground area behind that elementary school. Earlier this evening, a man who lives in the neighborhood came to the scene seeking answers. He says his adult disabled son is missing and he's very concerned he could be the victim of this violent crime. The man was stabbed to death in the basketball court area behind Gaywood Elementary School in the Lanham section of Prince George's County. Douglas Reyes came to the scene concerned because he had not heard from his disabled son, concerned that he could have been hurt.
Some people might want to steal something from him, think that he has money or cell phone or something. He has his cell phone. He's not answering.
Police say there were witnesses to the stabbing and they had strong leads in the investigation. They got the call around 4 in the afternoon and got here quickly.
We have strong suspect leads. However, we don't have anyone right now
In custody.
Right.
Detectives are working to figure out what led up to the stabbing and the motive. School was not in session because of the winter break.
There were some other individuals in the area. They called us.
The philosophers thousands of years ago figured out that it really doesn't make any sense to define a word in terms of what it is not. So to say something is unprovoked, I know it's in the common usage, but it really doesn't tell us anything, does it? Okay, so that somebody dies, and what we learned is the guy who got stabbed apparently didn't do anything to cause anyone to stab him. Okay, well, that doesn't really tell us much. How about this? How about this headline? How about fatal stabbing on Maryland playground fits long pattern of black on handicapped violence around the country? That tells us a little bit more, doesn't it? You know, Prince George's County in Maryland is kind of an odd duck. It's a county formed on the idea that white racism, that black people are relentless victims of white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, especially why cops are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. So 30, 40, 50 years ago, somebody got the idea, hey, why don't all the black people in the D.C., Baltimore area, why don't we just move to our own county? That's what St. George's is. And I think at best, the results down there have been kind of mixed. It's not some kind of black utopia. It's a county suffering from all the ills that all the other black neighborhoods in America are suffering from. High crime, lots and lots of bad business. Now this latest bit of bad business. A handicapped, we don't know what kind of handicapped person he was. Does it really make a difference? We know he was vulnerable. We know this other person came up and stabbed and killed this vulnerable person. And we know this happens to handicapped people, vulnerable people, old people, 80, 90, 100 years old all over the country. And yet police, public officials, and reporters look at it, shrug their shoulders, and go, it's unprovoked. Next. That's why we're doing these videos. We're going to stop the biggest lie of this generation, the myth of black victimization. I mean, every day we pick up the newspapers, the Black Lives Matter crowd is turning up the volume. Black people are victims of white racism, when it's the other way around. That's why I want you to share this video, like it, subscribe to this channel, go get and read Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. So much good information in there. It's good to, people tell me they like reading it too. It's not a dry book. It's a very interesting and fast moving book. Pick it up. Share that book with somebody that might need it. Somebody that might think it's okay to send their son to a playground in Prince George's County. This is Colin Flaherty, author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, reminding you the hour is getting late. Most of the stories here, we document how black-on-white crime and black mob violence is wildly out of proportion. That's a number. That's a crime rate. What we also see a lot of is that black-on-white crime is wildly out of whack, not just in the quantity of the crime, but in the quality. Give a look at this. You'll see what I mean.
A pair of cruel thieves targeted a disabled man, but tonight they're off the streets, tracked down after taunting the victim online. Fox 2's Dave Spencer with that story.
It happened in the stairwell at the Phoenix Place Apartments. That's the complex you see behind me. A beating caught on tape. Then, adding insult to injury, the victim finds the video on his own Facebook page. A vicious beatdown recorded with the victim's stolen phone. When it's done, Frankie Santana is left out cold.
He was laid out in the middle of the hallway.
I crossed to the hallway and knocked on somebody's door.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that's how they got help?
Yeah.
Santana has cerebral palsy, a disability that limits his movements. But in regards to what happened, he'll just tell you it wasn't a fair fight.
They spit on me and stomp on me, but yeah, nothing broke or nothing, just the eyes mess up.
Yeah. He says he's seen one of the two guys before. He says they likely snuck into his gated apartment complex in downtown Pontiac and ambushed him for his phone. One of the two suspects even shows his face in the video before posting it all over social media, including Santana's page.
Why would they do that and put it on Facebook? That's how they're going to get caught real quick.
Now we're getting a clear picture of both suspects. Mugshots of Nike Walker and Shadid Bey. Investigators say they were able to track down the suspects in part because they shared their crime with the world. The Oakland County Sheriff says preying on those with disabilities will not be tolerated, and added that posting this video on the victim's page is, quote, beyond belief. Both suspects in this case are being held on assault, robbery, and home invasion charges. In Pontiac, Dave Spencer, Fox 2 News.
In my books and in these videos, this is not the first story we've ever done on black on handicapped crime. We've done stories about black on white crime against deaf people, autistic people, retarded people, people of all kinds of disability. It's almost like a bee in a bottle kind of thing, putting a fly on the end of a pin and watching it squirm. There's a streak of masochism, a streak of sadism running through a lot of this crime, through a lot of this black on white violence. It's easy to ignore because it's so horrific. That's not what we do around here. So if you have a relative who maybe is in a wheelchair, has cerebral palsy, has a special needs child, just remind them of one thing. Don't make the black kids angry. You don't have to be on this channel very long to pick up that here we talk about black mob violence and black on white crime and how reporters ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, and even lie about it. But Crystal and Karazin takes it to another level. Crystalline wrote a book called Swirling, Dating and Mating. I forget the rest of the subtitle. But it's a book for black women. And so I'm documenting this really epic level of black mob violence, black on white crime, and black criminality way out of proportion. Black versus white and black versus Asian. And Crystalline, she takes it to the next level by saying, black women, don't date black men. Go find a white boyfriend, because they will marry you eventually. So let's pick up this next story from Nebraska, where a white woman walking down the street in the company of a couple of black women, in the company of a couple of black men, is assaulted.
Search for whoever beat up and humiliated this handicapped woman.
They attacked her in the middle of the day at 90th and West Maple, and tonight she's talking only with KATV News Watch 7's Chindone.
As you can see, Dana Brame is battered and bruised after getting assaulted Monday afternoon in front of several people. The single mom tells me while these scars may eventually heal, she'll be sad and scared until police catch her attackers. A busy corner turns into a brutal scene near 90th and Maple.
It's scary to the point where I sometimes don't want to go outside.
Even with crutches, Dana Brame makes it to the sidewalk. Her boyfriend and daughter's boyfriend are by her side. But suddenly, Brame says, 3 young women in a blue Chevy Cavalier stops at the light to start trouble.
The passenger girl rode down the window, proceeded to state to me, "Do you want to be on those crutches forever?"
The 42-year-old tells us the groups started arguing. Then the passenger spit on her.
When she spit in my face, I took my crutch and I swung at her. And she threw the brisk tea in the back of my head and hit me with it. Pulled into that parking lot, parked the car. All 3 of them got out of the car.
Brame says the driver even hit her with a rock. That's when the 2 men with Brame jumped in to defend her.
They tried to, swarm her in the process, but I grabbed both the driver and the other one.
When they hit me, they dodged. I had to dodge a left punch from one girl. I had to dodge another punch. I was dodging punches, and she caught me from behind on this side, and she punched me in the eye, as you can see.
The bruises and pain are making it harder to recover after a car crash left her injured a year ago.
These girls need to go to something where they get the help that they need to get rid of the anger that they put on me that day.
Still, this mom has a forgiving message.
I wish these girls would have came at me differently, because maybe I could have been their angel. Maybe I could be the person to help them.
And so far, we haven't found any businesses with surveillance footage of the attack, but police hope you saw something. All 3 women are black, believed to be in their late teens.
So my brother and I have had Crystalline Kerrison on our radio show a couple of times at WDEL in Delaware, talking about interracial dating and the dynamics of it, the good and the bad. And one of the things we talked about on our radio show a couple of times, and this is in her book as well, and it's something I've talked about on her podcast a couple of times. I've asked her, so what's it like when a black person and a white person are dating and they're out in public? If they get any grief, where does it come from? The overwhelming amount of taunting, harassment, threats, and violence comes from black people who do not approve of a black person going out with a white person. That's what we saw here in this case. The person who sent me this clip says, "Hey, it's even happening in Nebraska now." Well, I'm sorry to say that I'm long past being surprised about anything that happens in Nebraska, in Omaha, or Lincoln. I'm not surprised at anything that happens in Iowa, in Des Moines, in Cedar Rapids, in Ames. Because this whole black on white violence thing is happening in a lot of places where people are absolutely surprised at it. But they wouldn't be surprised if they read "Don't Make the Black Kids Angry." Hey, question. Here's a question for you guys. I think some of you guys might actually know this. Did you see where one of the black women threw a can of iced tea at the at the victim in question. You saw a picture of it on the ground. I think that was the actual can. It was grape iced tea. Did that remind anybody of anything? Hint, hint, Trayvon Martin, blah, blah, blah. So many questions. Not that many answers. This is Colin Flaherty, author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. I hope you'll remember that if you're ever visiting the Cornhusker State. Over the last few months, I've been urging people on this channel to let us know if you've ever been the victim of black-on-white crime, black mob violence, or black criminality. Been urging people to tell me their stories, either in an email or in an MP3 file. I'm including all these stories in a book I'm working on now. I think the working title of the book is It's Not Our Fault You Can't Fight. A couple hours ago, I get probably one or two of these a day at least, sometimes more. This was long and detailed about a guy who grew up in Georgia, had a bad leg. He described it as a club foot, which somehow spread to the rest of his leg. He describes his time in grade school as one long bout of harassment, taunting, beating, and torture, all black on Handicapped. He told me 2 weeks ago he went to a laundromat when 3 black people surrounded him and began taunting him, threatening him, and hitting him again. He said it reminded him of grade school. 1 hour after I received that email, somebody sent me this story from a week or so ago.
And now, a blind student targeted by a creep. And police say a critical clue helped them put a man in cuffs.
2 alarming arrests tonight. The first from a chilling incident on a South Florida college campus.
This crime involved a disabled student. The night team's Brandon Byer is live at Broward College in Davie with this. Brandon?
Belkis, police say what makes this suspect's crime so sinister was that his alleged victim is blind.
Just one station there Friday afternoon when 23-year-old Devon Fuller booked into the Broward County Jail. He's accused of stalking a fellow student at Broward College and grabbing her inappropriately.
That is scary.
Davie police say that's Fuller there walking through the hallways. His alleged victim, a blind student. Police say he grabbed her once outside, then again inside.
It was at that point where the offender put his arms around her, grabbed her around the waist, and began to just touch her in her private areas.
Broward College students say they feel safe on campus, pointing out the emergency call boxes. Police say this student was at a disadvantage, unable to see, and they say her attacker took full advantage.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, that's uncalled for.
Police arrested him Friday. He now faces several charges. Other students say it's a good reminder. Try to never walk alone.
We'll probably travel together to the bus stop or to the car, whatever parking garage.
All right, the college put out a statement. They say student safety and their security, that is a top priority here on campus. They also commend Davie police for their quick action here. Now, the suspect, he's been expelled from the school, no longer a student. Meanwhile, he heads before a judge sometime tomorrow.
I get a lot of parents asking me about the safety of this college or that college, and I always refer them to the Cleary alerts, the crime alerts at every college. You know, sometimes some colleges make it very easy to find. Some colleges make it very difficult to find. But they're all required to keep crime alerts on their websites and in their police department. Crime alerts that you're allowed to just go in and check out. That'll really give you a sense of what's going on in the campus. So even though we've already caught this guy in Broward County, I thought I'd check to see how easy it was to find the crime alert. So all I did was go type in Broward College crime alert, hit a button, popped up to that exact page, and there it was the fondling crime alert from June the 29th of this year. All handy-dandy, lots of details. It's amazing how many stories we have on our Black on Handicapped playlist. The first one I think of is a guy who had this rare disease that kind of makes him look like the Elephant Man. You know, he got worked over pretty good by a group of black kids. Thinking of all the autistic kids we've done stories on, bullied, beaten by groups of black people. Thinking of the senior citizens, the ones 70, 80, 90 years old. Home invasions, robberies, beatings, shootings. Is there any group that doesn't have to worry about making the black kids angry? Maybe more than anywhere else in the country, Chicago media has a big problem. All the big TV stations and newspapers there are all down with the cause. They're all in with the story of relentless black victimization at the hands of white racists, especially cops. When the Mayor's Commission came out with a report a few months ago saying, oh yeah, we finally figured out what's wrong with Chicago and all the crime here and all the murder, all the stuff that's causing lots and lots of people to move out of Chicago. We finally figured out what's behind it. Oh yeah, white racism from white cops. And they've been doubling down on that for a long time. They double down on it not just in the stories they cover, they double down on the stories they don't cover. But the big problem is reality keeps intruding into their little fairy tale. I remember when I was writing White Girl Bleed a lot, I sent some emails out to some reporters around the country saying, hey, I'm going to be in this case, I said, hey, I'm going to be in Chicago on my book tour for White Girl Bleed a lot. You want me to stop by your studio? So Ravi Bikewal, he's like the big dog in Chicago. He's the big dog there. He's the anchor of the ABC affiliate, right? Boy, he sent me a series of emails that I documented in White Girl Bleed a lot. Each one nastier than the last. First, it was the tone of the emails was, Colin, none of this is happening. Then he kind of changed his tone to say, oh yeah, it's happening, but for a very good reason, and you're a very bad person for noticing. But even Ravi's going to have trouble with this story.
New at 11 o'clock, a cancer patient found badly beaten outside a treatment center has died. This happened in North Suburban Zion. Laura Podesta is live with the latest on this story. Laura.
Judy, friends of the victim are writing on Facebook. They are sick over this news, absolutely devastated. 46-year-old Shannon Vincel, pictured here, was sitting outside a cancer treatment center on 27th Street in Zion Monday night when police say a man ran up to her and hit her on the head with a blunt object. She later died. Vincel was receiving radiation for breast cancer, according to this man who spoke to her in the minutes before the attack.
We was sitting out here probably about a half hour or so before it happened. Me and my brother went in. I come back out to smoke cigarettes and seen all the fire trucks and ambulances, wondering what was happening. They said a black guy come up and hit her in the head and took off that way.
They're still trying to figure out if this attack was random or somehow targeted.
It's weird because even though the guy in the story identified the attacker as a black person, Channel 7 still trying to keep up the vague description dodge that is so popular now. This is what they put in their website. They said, police did not have a good description of the suspect. So thank you, Channel 7, for helping us once again to see exactly what that means. When they say you do not have a good description, that means the person was black, except the person writing the copy for the website or the news anchor would rather we did not bring that up for reasons of their own. You know, at the very end of the story, the reporter, talked about whether the attack was targeted or random. Well, those aren't really good choices. I mean, if I asked you, what day you go to church, Thursday or Friday, you would go, no, aren't there any more choices than that? And I go on Sunday. Well, the choices in this case are not random and targeted. The choices in this case are, does this fit a pattern or not? If this was an Asian person beating the hell out of that, killing that white woman in front of the cancer center, we would have to say, boy, that's an anomaly. That never happens. For a white guy hitting that chick over the head and killing her, we'd have to say, well, that's pretty unusual. But to say that a black person killing a white person under these circumstances is random is to totally misunderstand what the word random is. It's not random. It's part of a pattern we see all over Chicago. It's part of a pattern we see in the dead woman's hometown of Springfield, Missouri. Yeah, Springfield, Missouri is a center of black-on-white crime and violence, as I documented at length in White Girl Bleed a Lot. Maybe Ravi will have some thoughts on the topic. I better go check my email. In the meantime, why don't you guys put your heads together and try to figure out what that woman with cancer sitting there minding her own business, what she was doing to make the black kid get so angry.
When I first started writing and doing videos about black on white crime and black mob violence, I used to ignore the stories and videos I would see about black on senior crime and black on old woman rape because I thought they were outliers. I thought they were just not, I didn't think they were a big enough pattern, so I just ignored them. That was a mistake. I see a lot of these. I see a lot of stories on black on senior crime, the worst kind, and the worst of the worst is black man on old woman rape. Here's the latest case out of Nashville.
Convicted sex offender back in jail on rape accusations. This is a story you'll Fox 17. 50-year-old Reginald Gregory of Madison is accused of raping a 60-year-old woman with disabilities Monday. Now, here's what's so awful about the accusations right now. This woman had been on an MTA bus with her groceries when police say Gregory offered to help her get them inside of her house. According to police records, that's when they say Gregory raped and nearly choked the woman to death inside of her own home. He is now in Metro Jail on $250,000 bond.
Niagara Falls are looking for the suspect in this slap attack on a local man. This video was posted on social media just after midnight, and since then, it has sparked a wave of reaction. Now, we've decided to blur the victim's face because he is physically and developmentally disabled. 7 Eyewitness News reporter Ed Riley has been working this story all day, joins us now with more. Ed.
Well, Jeff, during the holiday season, you would like to think that people are being a little nicer to each other, but that was not the case in Niagara Falls, where a group of people roughed up a disabled person and then posted the video online. The Niagara Falls community is now outraged, and police are very determined to arrest those responsible.
Give another smack.
The video was posted on Facebook. It shows a mentally and physically disabled individual identified by police as Billy being confronted by 3 people, one of them in Billy's face and yelling at the scared man. Then things become physical.
I'm gonna kill you.
You don't slap people around like that.
No way.
We showed the video to people who know Billy, all of them furious.
Very terrible. He don't deserve that.
I wish they'd play it with me. I'm an old Marine. In plain English, I'd beat the hell out of them.
Police now believe the incident was recorded outside the entrance to the Top store at 1000 Portage Road.
It's very sad.
Billy is unemployed and gets help from social services. He is not homeless, but people who know him tell us he wanders Pine Avenue between Hyde Park Boulevard and Portage Road on a regular basis.
And he's harmless. He comes in my store quite often.
George Optical gets visits from Billy frequently, and owner James Fernandez takes it upon himself to keep an eye on Billy.
The incident that was posted, that's just very hard to accept around here, because most anyone that you'll talk to up and down Pine Avenue knows Billy is a very harmless person.
Niagara Falls police were inundated with angry calls, and police say they are disgusted by the video. Detectives have now identified the man who did the slapping, and they are working on identifying the others.
I think they should catch these guys and put them in jail where they belong.
The entire Niagara Falls Police Department knows Billy, and they tell us Billy had very limited communication skills. Now, while the investigation continues, police say they are now looking forward to playing the video in court after they charge the perpetrators.
When I saw this story about Billy, it was clear he was kind of a Forrest Gump character. Mentally challenged, physically disabled, totally vulnerable. In my little town where I grew up, we had a character like Billy. His name was Sonny. And Sonny was totally vulnerable, but he was around, and he was friendly, and he always had a nice word for you, and people gave nice words back to him. If you went into somebody's store, maybe Sonny would take some bottles in or some cans in or something like that. Totally vulnerable. It's clear that the village of Niagara kind of adopted Billy. They thought they were protecting him. Billy must have thought he was safe. The message of today is that no person is safe from this intense level of black on white hostility, and the more vulnerable you are, the more danger you are in. That applies to Billy. That applies to this 79-year-old woman we're about to see here. This story is from Baton Rouge. It really could be anywhere. Chicago, Baltimore, Philly, Springfield, Seattle, Portland, Milwaukee, all their suburbs. It's a story of a couple of black people knock on some old white lady's door. She answers. They barge in. They rough her up. They threaten her. Rough her up some more. They take her money, and they get caught. This black on white, this black on old lady violence is happening all the time. And even more unbelievable than this, what is happening on occasion. These robberies are followed by sexual assault. I don't think that happened here, but really, when you're 79 years old and you're the object of this kind of violation, it might as well be sexual assault. Do you think your life is ever going to be the same? Ever? Newspaper people will confidently report the injuries were minor. She's okay. Really? You think that's the way the world works? If you do, you have a lot to learn. I got to tell you the story I just read. I'm going to do a separate video on this. But there's a story today in a magazine called Mic, MIC.com. There's a story about sexual assault on what they call HBUC, historically black universities and colleges, but I call black colleges. And so the Department of Justice, Department of Education is filing some actions against these colleges because they're not doing enough to report and prosecute rape and sexual assault on their campuses. Okay, fair enough, go through it. We've done a lot of stuff about assault on college campuses and how the universities have to react one way and how sometimes they do not. this campus then, but then the magazine kind of get into it. This is a magazine by black people for black people, and it went on to say, sexual assault is a pretty bad thing among black people. It said 60% of black women report they have been sexually assaulted and raped before the age of 18. 60%. Then here's the kicker. The article went on to say only 1 out of 15 rapes are reported. In White Girl Bleed a Lot, I put a video in there from Melissa Harris Perry from MSNBC where she talked about that exact topic. Where she said because black women who are raped do not want to turn their rapists over to the racist white police, they don't report the crime. That's about as sick as it gets. But when we talk about these stories, here we're just reporting 2 stories, right? We're reporting the story of Billy, the handicapped guy, and the 79-year-old woman, kind of handicapped in her way. Just 2 stories. If it were just 2 stories, it would not merit national attention that you and I are giving it right now. But of course it's not just 2 stories. These 2 stories illustrate this enormous level of black on white crime and black mob violence that's happening all over the country, and reporters and public officials love to ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, and even lie about. What the hell were they talking about? A slap attack. A slap attack. I didn't see a slap attack. I saw an assault on one of our most vulnerable citizens. I saw a threat to kill. I saw 3 people there, by the way. 3. That's a slap attack? That's why we're doing this. That's why we're making these videos. That's why I want you to share them. Put them on your Facebook page. Put them on your Twitter. Send them in an email to your friends. Like this page. Subscribe to this channel. Don't make the black kids angry. Read it. Give it to somebody. And I really don't give a damn if that person raises their eyebrow anymore. You know what? I'm kind of past caring about that. There's too much bad stuff going on. And you and I cannot just sit here on the sidelines and just look at it and go, well, if I told my friends about it, they might not like me anymore. That's the Japanese curse. May you have weak friends. You and I do not need weak friends who are quite capable of ignoring this enormous level of crime and violence directed at old people and handicapped people. Oh yeah, we've got a lot of videos on handicapped. I kind of forgot about that. How many videos do we have on autistic kids? How many videos do we have on somebody in a wheelchair? Lots and lots. In schools. And now that you're sitting here watching these videos, I'm sorry to say it, but you're in a different level now. You are in a different level of moral responsibility. You know. You just can't walk away from this. If you do, you're going to be a different person. A person you don't want to be. This is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. I look forward to walking with you forward to demand the truth, to speak the truth, and to spread the truth.
This channel, in its various incarnations, has had a lot of strange playlists. I mean, I didn't think when I first started doing this a couple of years ago, reading and writing and making videos about black mob violence, black on white crime, and black criminality, and how it's wildly out of proportion, and how reporters and public officials are in such deceit, denial, and delusion about it, I really had no idea of all these different categories we'd be filling up with videos. Okay, so we got black on cop, black on school. We have hundreds of videos of that. We have, how about black on old woman? I mean, we're talking 70, 80, 90 years old. Some involving sexual assault. But I think even just as strange as that, maybe even a little stranger, are all the episodes of black violence and black mob violence against people with handicaps. Now, the video you're going to see, deaf people get very touchy when you start describing them as handicaps, since many of them don't think they are, which is fine by me. But let's just say their condition made them a target. Let's just check out the video before I get myself in a lot more trouble.
Recovering after they were attacked last Monday. The couple, both with injuries to their arms, Dee recovering from a concussion. The woman helping them out, known as Team Mom, says they're living in constant fear.
They're scared to really come forward because they feel like somebody is gonna do something more to them.
The two were attacked after police say this woman, Shonda Lane,
was greatly offended. We don't even believe she knew these victims were deaf, and she was just greatly offended by their mannerisms, if you will, of them not being able to communicate with her and shooing her off of their property.
Shortly after, police say she attacked them with a baseball bat near their home. Early the next morning, Team Mom says their home was broken into.
These young ladies have nothing. Everything, they had a phone, they broke their phone.
Now she's asking for the community's help to get these women back on their feet.
We've reached out to different organizations that deal with hearing impaired to try to get some of those things replaced.
With George Zander's memorial fresh on many people's minds, Team Mom wonders if they were targeted because they're lesbians. But the police department says this is not a hate crime.
And in this particular case, again, the motive appears to be just some irrational conclusion by an offended party who came back and assaulted them.
Regardless of motive, Team Mom is asking anyone willing to donate to bring donations to the Desert Hot Springs UPS store. And Dee and Kat say they're thankful for any help they can get.
This is not even the first time I've heard of black people attacking a deaf person. I used to play golf with a guy in California. I heard about him before I played with him. And the guy was he was a fantastic guy. His family had a restaurant. He managed one of their restaurants. Everybody liked him. He did a great job. He's a great golfer. Could not hear a thing. But if he was looking at you, he could tell you, he could hear everything. He could read everything. So he was telling me one time, he talked and you understood him very easily. He was telling me that just the night before he had been in some 7-Eleven or something, and the black guy behind him was trying to talk to him. He couldn't hear a thing. So all of a sudden the black guy's he turns around and this black guy's getting very aggressive and putting his hands on him. And he goes, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I'm deaf, I can't hear a thing." That ended that episode of hostility there. But it's weird of how much of this we hear about. I mean, I'm thinking of the autistic kid just the other day who got beat up on the train in St. Louis. I'm thinking of a case not too far from my house where a guy with the elephant man disease, a couple dozen black people beat the hell out of him. This is a long list of autistic people or homeless people or kind of people who are, the Forrest Gump, whatever we want to call a Forrest Gump kind of person. And now we come back to these ladies living in, I think it's called Desert Hot Springs, California. Been there many a time to play golf out there. And, never occurred to me it'd be a kind of place where the deaf people have to worry about not making the black kids angry.